Lawin Media Network.
Bringing to you the most relevant content across all platforms.
Business, legal, politics, health, lifestyle, and entertainment.
Your source for all the news and updates in the greater Houston community from Texas and all over the world.
Get informed and empowered with Lawin Media Network.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Pink Table Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Carly D., a doctorally prepared registered nurse, professional development specialist, educator, mentor, victims advocate, and thriver. The show is produced by Lawin Media Network, and you can catch us live every Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, either through our Facebook channel, YouTube, Twitch TV, and on all podcast platforms. Tonight, we have a special episode. Joining us will be Dr. Betsy Hassan, a force to be reckoned with in the field of nursing. She is a nursing leader and advocate, and she will be talking to us about her journey in nursing and leadership and how she is helping to advance the profession of nursing. So everybody, please welcome to my show, my friend and one of my mentors that I look up to, Dr. Betsy Hassan.
Carly, thanks.
Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. I've been looking so forward to this interview with you because I know you have so much great stories and insight to share with my audience.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. So for those of my audience at home watching, can you tell us about yourself and your background? Who is Dr. Betsy Hassan?
Oh God, I think that's a question that, could be asked at so many different points in my life. So we'll talk about who I am today. I really started nursing as sort of a response to wanting to feel connected to folks. And I had, when I was young, my father, he was about 8 years old, my father was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and some other illnesses. And, it was through his journey that he eventually passed away when I was 12 years old from that. But in all of those instances, when I was in the hospital, when I was with him at care appointments, there was always a nurse by his side. And that always just seemed really comforting and warm to me. And of course, my mother told me I should be a nurse. So I immediately decided that I was not going to do that. And I went to college and I was really interested in anthropology. So I do have an initial degree, a bachelor's degree in anthropology. It was in that last semester of my senior year that I had taken a class about HIV and AIDS in a cross-cultural context. So really learning about, Haiti and sort of the cultural implications of the HIV epidemic and those sorts of things. And so I walked out of that class and really said, I think I should be a nurse. And my mom said, finally, I've been telling you this for a long time. And so then I did an accelerated program down in Baltimore, Maryland at Johns Hopkins, which really was just an incredibly transformative time in my life. I joined the Baltimore community and the Hopkins community and really kind of found myself there. And it immediately felt like I belonged and that I really wanted to connect and stay in that community. Then I started nursing, our first job together, Carly, a long time ago.
Are you in spring?
That's right. We did our nurse residency program together, and we were both in neurosciences, which, I really didn't come out of nursing school with like a a passion or a focus for a certain specialty. And so, and at the time, it was really hard to get a nursing job as a new grad. And so I had grand plans to like move to California to do all these big things. And I couldn't get a job out there. And so, I feel very lucky though that I was able to stay at Hopkins and work there in neuro, because that was a unit that the leadership just really had a genuine interest in seeing people grow, and so I had lots of opportunity on the unit, with things like shared governance, the magnet program, precepting charge nurse, like all of those starts to sort of like get that leadership itch. And then I had decided that I really wanted to try professional development because I loved precepting. I loved having nursing students. And so then I actually became a nurse educator in the nurse residency program. So kind of like full circle going back to the nurse residency. And I just loved it. I think it was a really great program. We saw about 350 new graduates a year. And, brought them all through and followed them. And I'm still in contact with some of them, which is like really fun because now they're like off doing these really great things. And we still have that connection. So that's great.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. Yes. And so for all of you at home, me and Betsy actually met in the new grad residency program at Johns Hopkins. The program was called Spring. And we went through our 3 weeks of classes together and then our whole year of I think it was an 18-month actually fellowship program. Yeah, so it was pretty intense. And so we got to really bond and get to know everybody in our residency program. And it was just such a wonderful time. We were all new to Baltimore. Like you said, it was hard getting a job. Me too. I was applying out in the West Coast. I was trying to go to the deep South. I wanted warm weather, after being in frigid, cold New York. And we all ended up in Baltimore, and we
Thank
just
God, right? That we ended up here. Like
it was great though. It was good times, I really felt, to me, the residency program really helped cultivate us and make us stronger, excellent nurses.
Yeah. I think it was so important too, like thinking about us and that cohort and how we went through that first year of nursing, which has so many ups and downs, and you kind of get knocked around a little bit, and then you never have to do it again. But it's nice to have a really solid group of peers as well as mentors through the residency program going through that. So I'm so glad we both ended up there.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have gone through it without you guys. I mean, I feel like we leaned on each other. We could vent, we could laugh, we could hang out. It was just such a great time. And it's truly one of the most memorable moments in my life. Just those first couple of years at Hopkins, it was just so wonderful.
Yeah. So I spent almost 10 years at Hopkins, really loved it. And it got to the point where, I was thinking about a family and what would make sense for raising my kids. And all of my family was up in Vermont. And so it's funny because you have these connections. And I sent a colleague of mine my resume and said, I know that things don't come up that often in Vermont. If something comes up in the next 2 years, let me know, give him wide range. And, he wrote me back about 2 days later and was like, I think there's actually an opening right now that you might like. And so, the move was really quick. And I went into a director position for nursing excellence and managing the magnet program for a community hospital. That was it was wonderful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us about your transition to leadership. Did you ever think you were going to be a nursing leader? Did you want to stay at the bedside? What was that journey like?
Yeah, I think it was, I think I always had wanted to advance in a nursing career. I really loved being at the bedside. I really fell in love with the neuro population and sort of the specialty that Hopkins was able to provide. But then, I also had just sort of this desire to kind of spread knowledge in a more broad way. And so really starting in that nurse educator role helped me to kind of see that nursing offers so much, and that this might be something I could be good at. And so, moving into that first like real director role was a big learning curve. But, it was a smaller organization. So there's, it's quick that you learn everybody's name and you know where to go for resources. And it was a supportive environment at the time. And then as like things go well, you get added responsibilities kind of constantly. And so very quickly over 5 years, I, gained more departments under me, more staff, and then was their chief nursing officer during the pandemic as well.
Wow, wow. That must have been challenging. What was it like being a nurse leader during the COVID pandemic?
And in Vermont, it wasn't the same as a lot of other places in the Northeast. And particularly in this community organization, we had sort of prepared for this onslaught of patients, and sort of like, in the throes of incident command and doing a lot of preparation, but we never got the volume of patients that we had really thought. So we had to sort of, manage all of those dynamics, as well as, nobody knew a lot, and so it was trying to reassure staff that we were doing the best thing for them, and for our patients. But looking back, you kind of think we probably could have done some things differently, and a colleague and I were talking about patient visitation and sort of, how that was so hard, and restricting visitors, and how that probably caused moral injury to the staff that were having to say, like, no, you can't come in, and, additional harm to the patient. So there's a lot reflecting back on that. Probably next time, hopefully there isn't one, that we might do things differently.
Yes. Speaking on that, was there anything that you guys did as leaders to try to boost the morale of the staff? I know there was a lot of burnout during that time and a lot of nurses leaving the workforce during that time.
Yeah, I would say, we were really no different in terms of burnout. We had folks decide it was going to be the time that they left the profession or left the organization for a while. So we did have some turnover in that respect. I think, a lot of it was just about building connection, like making sure that as leaders, we were out there and rounding, that we were going to, our COVID unit, that, we weren't afraid to put on an N95 and kind of be out there with them. And so I think it was really just strong communication, and also really being responsive, and genuine in addressing their concerns. I think that a lot of people were scared, and they were trusting us to provide them with the best sort of circumstances and policies and safety mechanisms.
Yes, absolutely. And I think from what I've seen, because I follow a lot of what you do online, I think you really did show a good face of leadership. Your staff, everybody seems to really have a great rapport with you. So I think you did a great job at, helping to establish those connections and boosting the morale of your staff. So I think that's great. Great job on your end.
Thank you. One of the things I used to think about, it was hard as an executive because you're no longer, surrounded by nurses. You spend 90% of your time with, other disciplines in leadership and executives. And when I would have kind of a rough day and, things weren't really going my way, the first thing I would do is go out and round on my staff. And like that, 45 minutes to an hour of just spending time with the people doing the work that I was serving was, such a changer for me and sort of my attitude.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. When I was still working in the hospital, even as an educator, just doing those rounds. I'd round in the morning, I'd round in the afternoons, during those crucial times when I know the nursing staff needed that extra boost, needed even just, hey, how's it going? You okay? Do you need anything? And even sometimes I offer even just a Starbucks run, and they love that.
Yeah,
You know?
simple things.
Oh yeah, and it's amazing because during the rounding, what I thought would be just a simple act, sometimes I had a nurse break down and cry to me,
Mhm.
and I'm there fanning them, and we got the tissues, we got water, they needed a moment,
Yeah,
and so I think it's so important that you mention that rounding and being present for the staff. I think just having that physical presence with the nursing staff is so important because they often see leaders and administrators as being separate from them.
yeah.
They think once we left the bedside, we're done with the bedside.
Mhm.
We're not scrubbing in anymore.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it's just so important to do those roundings, those touch points. It's really helpful to,
yeah,
yeah. So I
yeah.
love.
I think too, one of the best things that got us through the pandemic was we had a really good rapport and relationship with our chief union stewards. The nursing staff were unionized there, and just the trust that we had developed over time really served us at difficult times. And needing to ask them for a wage freeze while we manage certain finances, and
Yes.
when we came back to them when we were able to reinstate those, wage increases and things like that. But, that takes a lot of trust
Yes.
to negotiate through something like that. And so that was something else that, really stood out to me as a positive aspect and a priority during that time.
That's awesome and that's amazing. And I'm glad that you considered that because not a lot of hospital administrators think about, the salary and how it impacts their staff. I mean, even though most people go into the field, because they love it, at the end of the day, they still have bills to pay and families to
Yeah.
feed, and especially during the crisis as COVID, it was even that much more important.
Yeah, and they all had loved ones that they were going home to, right? And worried about, and yeah, making sure they can meet their basic needs, because Vermont is also it's beautiful, but it's expensive to live here for sure. We got heating bills to pay.
See, down here is the AC. We got the AC bill.
Oh my gosh.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is off to a great start, but we're going to go ahead and take our first commercial break of the evening. But everybody stay tuned for more Pink Table Talk with Dr. Betsy Hassan.
In a world filled with fleeting moments, there's beauty waiting to be captured. My name is Christian, and I specialize in immortalizing your most precious memories. From elegant weddings to vibrant events and timeless portraits, I'm here to make every moment unforgettable. Let me tell your story through the lens. Contact me today and let's create magic together.
Welcome back, everybody, to Pink Table Talk. Tonight, we're talking with nurse leader, advocate, and educator, Dr. Betsy Hassan. For the first part of this show, she talked to us about her nursing journey and what led her into nursing, and then now into nursing leadership. So, Betsy, who are the mentors or leaders that have influenced your leadership style and who you continue to go to for advice?
Yeah, that's a great question and one that I'll love answering. I've had so many great mentors throughout my career. I even think about back in those early days. you know, some of the nurse leaders that sort of took me under their wing and helped to foster me. But in terms of leadership, you know, I think one of the most influential mentors I've had has been Carol Conroy. She is a fellow nurse leader within the state. She's been a chief nursing officer for a long time. She now participates on our hospital association board. She's very active in AONL and our regional ONL. She, you know, we've gone to advocacy days together, and she was one of my sponsors for my fellowship application to the American Academy of Nursing. She is someone that like just puts professionalism at the top of the list, that, you know, really advocates for nursing and what's best for nursing. Always thinking about our patients and sort of how different pieces of legislation may impact them. And, you know, how we really need to be at every table where decisions are being made in healthcare. And so she's really been, you know, for the past number of years, I would say really the most influential mentor on me right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You were recently inducted into the Fellowship of American Nurses and you won an award. Tell us about that and how that process was and what did it feel like?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I would say I went into that process not expecting to be inducted the first time. That it's a process. So the American Academy of Nursing is really sort of the health policy arm of, you know, sort of the ANA Foundation and all of those sister companies. And they really are seen as sort of the most influential within the health policy space. So essentially it's an application process, and you have to distill your career and what contributions you have made at the local, regional, national, and sometimes international level into about 1,200 words. So there's a lot of revisions and, you know, really kind of going through the application. So you're pulling out the most impactful pieces of your career and how it's been sustained over a number of years. And then you have to have 2 sponsors that are already within the academy to then also write on your behalf. That you should, you know, that you meet the qualification to be inducted. And then you submit your resume with, you know, everything you've ever done.
A booklet. It's a booklet with nursing.
Yeah. And then you submit it, and then you literally wait for about 6 months. And, you know, you either get an email that is a congratulations or, you know, not this time, with no other feedback. And so I had really this is something I had been working on for about 2 years with Carol as one of my sponsors, and then another sponsor, Ashley Waddell. And, you know, I finally, when I submitted it that time, I, you know, sort of put it in a box, didn't really tell anybody. And then, you know, I got my congratulations letter while I was actually with my sponsors. And so it was really great and exciting. And then you get to go to a big gala and wear a fancy dress. And
yeah, we saw your beautiful picture with your gown.
Yeah. And that is my colleague, Ellen Flaherty. She was the other Vermont nurse that was inducted. So there's only probably about a handful of us in the state. So it's an extra special honor.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And congratulations again. And that is a well-deserved honor for such a great leader. What would you say is your leadership philosophy? How would you define your leadership style?
Well, it's a big question. I really would say sort of authenticity and, you know, being genuine in every interaction, I think is really important. But I would probably consider myself an authentic leader. I do really believe that, you know, whatever role that you're in, as a nurse, you're considered a leader, that you have responsibilities to be a leader. And I think that it's really about sort of breaking down the hierarchies and really looking at, you know, shared decision making and making sure that the people that are doing the work are at those tables where they need to make decisions about the work.
Yeah,
You know, and I
absolutely.
think as a leader, it's really my responsibility to bring people along with me, right? That, you know, it's great that I've gotten to a table, but I need to bring, you know, 5 other people along with me.
Yes, I love that. I love that. You know, it's that paying it forward mentality, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What qualities do you think an effective leader should have?
I think it's really about one, being genuine. I think that people can really sort of sniff that out when someone is not genuine, and I think that can really erode trust like pretty quickly.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and so, you know, I think that's one. I think approachability and curiosity. You know, it's really important to sort of approach situations, you know, with curiosity, not sort of come in with a preformed thought. Oh, you can see a little. You know, and then I think it's also really about, you know, being knowledgeable, constantly learning, you know, investing in your own professional development so you can also role
Yes.
model that for staff. And I think those things, along with, you know, lots of other traits can be helpful, but I think really staying true to yourself and being genuine, and also staying humble, you know, remembering that, like, you know, who you are, where you're coming from, what you've accomplished, and to be proud of that, but to, you know, remember that you're representing and serving the staff that work for you.
Yes, I love that. You know, I love that be genuine, you know. Um, I often have seen a lot of nurse leaders who were genuine, who were kind. They didn't last long. You know, they leave the field. How would you handle, or how do you think is the best way for those nurses to kind of stay in there if they are genuine, if they are real, if they do have that kind heart? Because a lot of them do end up leaving because it's so challenging. It's so tough being a nurse leader.
Yeah. Well, you know, first I would say that, like, my career has not been all like roses and rainbows and like this really happy experience, right? Like, but I've had those hard times too, and I've been in those toxic environments where I feel like that was threatened, right? That, like, I was getting to the point where I didn't it wasn't good for my well-being, for my own mental health, that, you know, the effects of a toxic work environment can really, you know, impact who you are. And sometimes I was fortunate enough to where I was able to leave and find a new opportunity. But I think sometimes people are forced to stay in those environments, whether either be, you know, the pay is what they need to pay the bills. And that can kind of change people as well. I
Yeah.
think you know, one of the things I've built over time, I think, is a lot of like personal resilience,
Yeah.
and sort of the different people that I lean on during these things. You know, when
Yes.
things get hard, you have to talk to someone who can help you put it in perspective. Sometimes that can be your colleagues, or, you know, a mentor, another nurse leader who can maybe commiserate with you, or, you know, talk it through with some solutions. And then sometimes it might be a mental health care provider, you know, like,
Yes.
absolutely. You know, you
Mhm.
can sometimes need an objective eye to kind of help you, you know, kind of process through some stuff, because leadership is really hard. It's
It
really,
is. Yes, absolutely. I love that. You know, here on this show, we promote a lot of self-care and mental health care. You know, it's not saying that someone has a problem, but we appreciate how it keeps us healthy, it keeps us stable, it keeps us balanced. And I love hearing that as a nurse leader, that you do go to other sources and you look and seek help from others, including a mental health providers. And I think that's so wonderful and so healthy to do. And I think that that does help you sustain in these tough areas. You know, nursing, like you said, it's a challenging field. And being a leader in that field is even more so challenging. So I think that's wonderful and healthy that you do that.
Yeah, I think, our jobs are hard enough, and then we all have lives on top of it, right? Like life happens in so many instances, and life can be unpredictable, and there can be those unanticipated life changes that you're going to have to figure out a way through while also, doing your job. And so having a lot of people that you can go to, or a lot of resources to help process that is really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking about having our own personal lives, how do you, Dr. Betsy, balance being a mom, a wife, a new puppy owner?
I know. I was thinking about like she's back there. Yeah, so I have two boys. They're 7 and 8 years old, soon to be 9, which is
Oh,
really exciting. And they're just, and I think over time, I sort of ebbed and flowed in sort of how I managed, being a mom and the different challenges I was having based on the position I was in. I had my second son as a planned C-section during the 2 weeks in between one of my semesters of getting my doctorate. Like,
wow.
that's not normal. Like, but it went great. I was really supported by my faculty and by my job, like it was fine. And I got through it. And so I think that's sort of like those experiences where you just sort of like manage through and you get to the other side of the hard part. Those help build that resilience to kind of then take on the next thing. During COVID, I would say that like I definitely worked too much. I felt like I had to be there for my staff, and I think I did in a lot of respect, but I missed out on some things, like my sister was taking care of my boys for most of the time during the day. And so like looking back on that, I'm more informed now on how I want to move forward with my life. So, now I'm in a different position where I'm able to have flexibility. I don't bring work home with me. I'm not answering the phone at 2 a.m. anymore. So it's sort of life has changed in all of those experiences that I've gone through as a mom have now shaped like how I'm moving forward as a mom. Because it's, the job that you're going to have forever.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah, they don't care. And it's the funniest thing because it's like, all day long I might be called Dr. Dill, Dr. Dill all day. When I get home, it's mom, here's my snot rag, here's this,
Mhm.
look at my butt and my boo-boo, It's like they don't care, it's just your mom, And
No.
so, and it is my best moments too. Like, I live for that. It's like I love teaching, I love being in the field, I love nursing, but my happiest moment is being home with my girls and even cooking and cleaning and, just seeing their little smiles and making them happy. So I definitely
Yeah. I think, one of the things I learned was, definitely during the pandemic and early on in sort of that executive role, I was like in the office every day, like 7:15, and now I'm like, I'm okay. Like I can take the kids to school. It's okay for me to do that. And I have an employer and a system of colleagues that help me to do that and make me know that it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm the person that stays home if somebody's sick and that's okay. Right. And so like having to sort of rewire my own expectations of myself too has been important in that work as well.
Yes, that's awesome. That is so awesome. So do you know this whole 6-7 then? Because you have it.
I mean, I hear it all the time, but I still have no idea what it means.
I know our kids are similar ages, so they have this whole new lingo, all this new language, and so I'm out of the program. Apparently, I'm not cool anymore. Well, everybody, we're going to go and take our second commercial break of the evening, but stay tuned for more Pink Table Talk with Dr. Betsy Hassan.
Join us for a captivating new series where Lawin sits down with the trailblazers of the music and entertainment world. Discover the stories behind the faces and voices that shape our culture and community.
We will bring you exclusive interviews with industry legends and rising stars. Behind the scenes insights and get a peek into the creative processes and personal journeys. Artists and performers and their upcoming shows and events.
Stay tuned for more updates and sneak peeks. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel.
Welcome back, everybody, to Pink Table Talk. The show is produced by Lawin Media Network, and you can catch us live every Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, either through our YouTube live channel, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, and on all podcast platforms. Tonight, we're talking with Dr. Betsy Hassan, I'm still recovering from a cold. And she's been talking to us about nursing, leadership, advocacy, and motherhood. So Betsy, Dr. Betsy, can you talk to us? What are the current challenges facing nursing right now?
Yeah, I think I don't think Vermont is very different than a lot of the places around the country, particularly rural areas where, our workforce is really one of our key areas of concern. Not only just our ability to create workforce, but then to retain them and ensure that they, are well cared for, in their work environment. And so that is one big piece, I think, workforce development, but then also that retention, because we are seeing folks leave not only an organization, but the profession after 1 or 2 years. And that's just really disheartening, but also knowing that they're facing, really tough challenges in the care environment. Yes. Another one that we hear really frequently about is workplace violence. That's occurring in, so many clinical environments. You used to really think it may be sort of, segregated to one care area or another, but, people going into home care or people in clinics, even people just answering the phone are experiencing, a lot of hostility and threats of violence, if not physical violence.
Yes, absolutely. I was just reading an article today about a settlement that a home health nurse's family received, $2.25 million, because the home health nurse had went into a home and she was murdered. And so, we do see a lot of violence against nurses. And I believe they said since the pandemic in 2020, those numbers have increased.
Yeah, it's really, think about the constraints that the pandemic put on the system, really limited access, delayed care, just sort of the financial impact, and sort of how all of those stressors then present themselves when someone's at their worst moment or seeking care, or untreated mental health. And, all of those things can really compound. And the person that ends up getting the brunt of it is the person that's with the patient 24/7. And that's usually the nursing staff or, support staff, as well.
Yes, mental health especially. And you made a great point about that. And I feel that since the pandemic, we've seen an increase in mental health issues. I believe we've had a long-standing history in this country of mental health problems, but I feel that because we had that long period of isolation, that those problems are now really presenting themselves more so.
Yeah, and I would say they're even presenting themselves amongst nurses and healthcare staff. Thinking about the Lorna Breen Act and who was a physician that died by suicide. This is also impacting all of us because we're just as human, and are subject to those same types of behaviors and things like that. So I think really ensuring that when we're dealing with mental health issues, that we're also thinking about our peers and our colleagues, and that we're checking in on them too. And that as organizations, we're providing outlets and resources for staff to be able to kind of engage easily to help them, because we need all of our healthcare workers for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so interesting you say that, because recently, in my past few years working in the hospital setting, they've incorporated now like almost like a self-defense trainings for the nursing. And it's like when I, started as a nurse, it was more so like kind of diffusion tactics, kind of just de-escalation, like how to talk people down, talk a patient down. Now they're actually training us with like physical moves to kind of help protect ourselves in case somebody is trying to assault us or corner us, And I think that it's so interesting how we've had to modify, how we're now actually training nurses because of the current climate.
Yeah, I think the instances of violence have sort of demonstrated how unprepared maybe we were as a profession, as a healthcare system, in sort of responding to instances of violence. Sorry about that. But I think, one of in part of my role now, like I oversee the staff that sort of build and develop all of our workplace violence de-escalation programming. And so, we're trying to get folks to, really make this mandatory. Some of our spaces have, which has been really great. But, as we talked a little bit about earlier, violence is really kind of happening anywhere. Particularly within the hospital. And so I think it has sort of shifted in that sense, but I think we also have a lot of proactive ways that we can address the issue. This past year, the coalition of professional nursing organizations teamed up together because we all had workplace violence on our agendas. And we partnered with some really great colleagues to write legislation that requires hospitals to implement workplace violence prevention programs and really details out the elements of training and resources that have to be available for staff. And so that was passed and brought into law. So we were super excited about that. And now we're helping our organizations to actually implement it and make sure they have the resources to do so.
Yes, and absolutely. And I'm definitely an advocate for making it a felony to assault a nurse. Just like if you assault a police officer or any other type of public official, I think assault on nurses should also be, a huge crime. And I think that can help to deter people and make them think twice before hurting a nurse.
Yeah, I mean, you hope in those instances they have the ability to think twice. I think, and I think that's really, we had a law that in Vermont previously that had been passed where law enforcement can actually come into the care environment and remove individuals, by arresting them and taking them into custody. But when we went back to the legislature, we really said, like, we want something that prevents having to use that law. We really want preventative measures, not measures that deal with things after the violence have already occurred. So that's really kind of what our focus is, and definitely like still maintaining patient rights and like patient-centered care and trauma-informed care. But it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of resources.
It is. It's going to take a lot of work on the legislative level to be able to get these policies and practices in place. And I love that, as a nursing leader, you are working on those types of initiatives. I feel that nursing has had a back seat when it's come to legislative action, but I'm loving seeing the growth and the empowerment currently that nurses across this country are starting to show.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we're all, sort of rallying around the Department of Education's new rule proposed rule that would remove nursing as a professional degree. And that really, what it does is limit the student loans that individuals can take out for graduate degrees. And so I think what we're seeing now is some unity where there kind of hasn't been before. It's all the professional organizations are sort of on the same page with this one. And so it's nice to see everybody kind of come together and really use the voice that we have. There's 5 million of us. We can pretty much sway any election that's out there, on the national level. So.
Yes, absolutely. And what are your thoughts? What impact do you think that this new ruling designating nursing degrees as not professional, what impact do you think this could have?
Yeah, the most concerning thing is really further limiting advancement opportunities, particularly for female-led professions. Like I think that when you look at the list that's either being removed or not being considered, that is kind of striking. But it's also really about, workforce development. We need faculty that are master's and doctorally prepared. If people can't afford to go, we're further limiting that as well. And now we've sort of bottlenecked us even more in terms of, new nursing development. And then I also think about, advanced practice providers, particularly in rural communities. We are dependent on APRNs. And so if we're, thinking about anesthesia as well, CRNAs are vital to some of our, organizations and being able to provide anesthesia coverage. So it's really concerning. And I'm hoping that we're going to have an impact, because we all are standing up and advocating for, for what we need to make sure we can continue to support people to seek these opportunities.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Deeming these degrees as not professional and limiting the loan, it's going to stop people from pursuing higher education and advanced degrees in nursing. And it's going to affect the nursing shortage that we are currently facing. And we already have a faculty shortage. So it's just going to make it even that much greater,
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's, hopefully it's something that everybody can sort of get, not just nurses, but other people can see sort of the limitations that this is going to put on healthcare. At some point in your life, you're going to need a nurse. And you really hope that one is there and you hope she's well qualified and well educated, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yes, absolutely. And, the thing about it is, like you said, when we think about access to healthcare, nurse practitioners who have gone on to get their advanced degrees, whether a master or a doctorate, they've helped bridge that gap in providing access to healthcare to more people. And so when we start to limit people from obtaining those degrees, we're going to start limiting access to healthcare. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a trickle down effect.
Yeah. And I would say that, advanced practice providers are definitely the folks that are in rural communities. There's it's really hard to recruit physicians to certain places as well. So, they do help that fill a lot of that provider void and ensure that our communities can be healthy.
And even in big overpopulated cities, a physician's patient load could be thousands of patients.
Yeah.
And so having nurse practitioners can help offset some of that patient load, where a patient may have to wait months for their annual physical can now be seen in a shorter period of time. And people don't understand those impacts. If you're having a pain or you need a test or a lab or something done, waiting months is critical. It could mean life or death for people. So, shortening that wait time, it's really so important.
Yeah. And I think too, it's a different type of visit. It's a different type of, patient provider relationship because it's through the nursing paradigm and the nursing lens. And that has a lot of benefit and quality to patients in primary care and just all along the continuum. And so really limiting that, I think, is unfortunate, and will be a detriment to our communities if we don't figure this out.
Yes, and so you mentioned that there's going to be some upcoming talks. What is happening in Vermont or on your end in nursing leadership to tackle this issue?
Yeah, so what I have seen definitely within, the listservs that I participate for advocacy is that nursing organizations in all states are sort of banding together and doing press releases. They're doing, interviews. And so Vermont is going to follow the same route with that as well. We've already released a press release about it, and hopefully we'll be working with some of our, local reporters to kind of get a more, broader story out there, and to help people understand how they can be a part of the solution.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I know here in Texas, our Texas Nurses Association, we are going to be hosting a legislative talk in January, where we're going to be advocating with our government officials to help make some change in this area. So I do hope that we can get this changed so that we don't suffer from the negative impacts that this will have.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would also just remind every nurse to vote. It really does matter. And I think, do your research, find out, what, different candidates support, and make sure that you vote, that your family members vote, that your patients vote. You don't have to tell them which way to go, but, just make sure that they cast their ballot for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. We're going to take our last commercial break of the evening, but everybody stay tuned for our final thoughts with Pink Table Talk.
For divorce and family law in Texas, Liggett Dizzen Law Firm PC will guide you every step of the way.
From initial consultation to detailed review of your case and strategic planning.
We'll sit with you during negotiations or mediations, and represent you in court.
Whether it is a family law, estate planning, or immigration, we will be there to guide through the final steps.
So, leave your legal matters behind you and embrace your future.
You can contact Liggett Dizzen Law Firm PC at 346-5454-346 or visit DizzenLawFirm.com.
Welcome back, everybody. We've been having a wonderful, wonderful discussion tonight with Dr. Betsy Hassan. We've been talking about nursing, leadership, advocacy, and the current challenges facing nursing and healthcare in general. So some final thoughts, Dr. Hassan, tell us what's next for you, what upcoming events, research, leadership initiatives, what's next on your plate?
Yeah, I think really, it is similar to what you mentioned with Texas. We are hosting an advocacy day, as well as some advocacy education coming up here in February. So really just planning for that, making sure that, we have the best attendance and we show up at the Capitol with, a strong group of nurses that are really looking forward to advocating. And then I think, really it's just that continued awareness and disseminating of information around sort of health policy and what the nursing profession can really provide to our communities, as well as sort of raising our level of accountability and access to certain parts of healthcare.
Yes, wonderful. That's wonderful. And for those thinking about going into nursing leadership, or maybe they're going through challenges and thinking of leaving nursing leadership, what words of advice do you have for them?
Ooh, well, I would say it's really hard, and you don't get the same sort of gratification, I think, from patient interactions every day. Like sometimes the reward of leadership can take 2-3 years, or when you finally see someone you've mentored do something really great that they've really wanted to do for, they've been working at it for a long time. So I think, first and foremost, like give yourself some grace find those outlets that you can, talk to if you are having a hard time, or, you're going through something work or not work related. And then I think, always make sure that you're finding whatever sparks, your passion or your joy in work. Find something you're excited about, and, leave a little bit of that if it's not the main function of your job, but find ways to engage. And, I think as a nurse leader, you have a voice, and you're also helping to support the voices of all the staff that you're working with. So just remember that, and use it for good. And nurses will change the world.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. That is so awesome. That is so amazing. I love nursing and I love nurses. And I do believe that statement, nurses can change the world. So I love it. And I think we'll leave on that note. Thank you so much for being a part of this show tonight, Dr. Hassan. It's a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things you're going to continue to do for nursing and leadership and advocacy coming down the road in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
That's it for tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Pink Table Talk. I will see you all next time. Have a great night.